Before the world wakes up, before the coffee brews, before the rush and the chaos, there is a sacred moment waiting for you. A throne room with your name on it, a divine seat reserved in the courts of heaven. A moment where you don't just speak to God, you hear Him speak to you. Your day is not a random series of events. It is a divine assignment. But how can you fulfill a divine assignment if you never check in with the one who assigned it? When you start your day without prayer, you're stepping into the battlefield without strategy, armor, or orders. You're waking up to war without knowing where the enemy is hiding. You're walking into the boardroom without knowing the agenda. Prayer is not an accessory. It's an essential. It's the ignition key of the kingdom. It doesn't just protect your day, it produces it. What you say in the morning determines what shows up by the evening. When you pray, heaven takes your words and releases angels on assignment. When you remain silent, hell keeps speaking. The first thing Adam received in the garden was not food. It was not a job. It was not even a woman. It was divine communion. He walked with God in the cool of the day. He started his life in conversation with the Creator. That wasn't just poetic. It was a pattern. You are not too busy to pray. You are too responsible not to pray. Every life you touch, every decision you make, every deal you sign, it all flows from the reservoir of your spirit. And if your spirit is empty, your impact will be hollow. There are miracles that only manifest when you rise early. There are secrets that are only whispered before the noise of the world begins. There are revelations that won't come when you rush, but when you rest at His feet. The early hour is not just a convenience, it is a covenant. You were not created to live by reaction, but by revelation. And revelation is not found in the chaos of life, it's found in the silence of prayer. So pray before you start your day. The first voice you hear in the morning holds more power over your life than most people realize. It shapes your emotions, frames your expectations, and programs your decisions. From the moment you open your eyes, your spirit is reaching to receive instruction. Your heart is waiting for direction. And your mind is open to whatever it hears first. That's why you must be intentional about who or what gets to speak into your day before anything else. The loudest voice is not always the wisest voice. The most frequent voice is not always the most faithful one. The world around you is filled with noise, media updates, social media scrolls, financial alerts, missed calls, anxious messages, breaking news and notifications trying to steal your focus and dictate your mood before you even leave your bed. If you're not careful, you'll start living your days by reaction instead of revelation. And that is the first step toward emotional exhaustion and spiritual stagnation. If you begin your day with the voice of fear, it will govern your schedule with anxiety. If the first voice you hear is the news, you'll be conditioned to panic before you even begin to pray. If the first voice you listen to is your own thoughts, clouded by yesterday's pain or today's pressure, you'll move through the day led by assumptions instead of anointing. God never intended for you to walk into your day unguarded. He designed your spirit to align with His word before it responds to the world. That's why the psalmist declared, "Early will I seek you." There is something powerful about what you prioritize first. First determines focus. First determines flow. And first determines fruit. You cannot afford to give your mornings to the wrong voice. Whatever speaks to you first will speak through you all day. If it's frustration, then your tone, choices, and reactions will mirror that agitation. If it's insecurity, then you'll make decisions rooted in inferiority and doubt. But if the first voice you hear is the voice of God, clear, calm, consistent, then you will carry peace into chaos, clarity into confusion, and confidence into confrontation. The voice you honor in the morning becomes the compass you follow throughout the day. When you rise in the morning and go straight to your phone, you are telling heaven that human opinions and digital distractions are your source of truth. But when you rise and give your first breath to God, you're inviting the wisdom of the Creator to govern your moments, your meetings, your mindset, and your movement. This is not about religion. It's about rulership. It's about dominion. You cannot have dominion over your day if you're being dominated by ungodly voices. You were never designed to navigate life with your head full and your spirit empty. If your spirit is not filled with truth in the morning, your mind will be filled with trouble by the afternoon. The enemy understands this principle. That's why he works overtime to distract you as soon as you wake up. He wants you to miss the divine instruction that God is releasing in the quietness of dawn. The enemy knows that if he can hijack your first focus, he can distort your entire day. But when you start with God's voice, every lie is exposed, every trap is revealed, Every burden is lifted. You begin to see not as the world sees, but as heaven sees. There are downloads from heaven that only come in the stillness of the morning. There are insights that God reserves for those who seek Him before the noise begins. He doesn't shout over your distractions. He whispers in your devotion. And when you choose to listen early, your ears become attuned to His frequency all day. You begin to discern what others miss. You begin to navigate challenges with supernatural poise. You begin to notice divine connections that others overlook. This is the fruit of hearing the right voice first. You begin to live with spiritual intelligence instead of emotional confusion. Many believers struggle through their day not because they lack talent or opportunities, but because they didn't consult heaven first. They walked into their assignments without hearing the assignment giver. They showed up to the meeting without hearing the message. They spoke to people before hearing from the King. And because of this, they live reactive lives, constantly fixing problems they were never supposed to encounter, constantly fighting battles they were never supposed to face. When you don't hear God's voice first, you'll end up chasing shadows instead of walking in light. Some people wake up and immediately scroll through social media, comparing their lives with filtered illusions and curated snapshots. Within seconds, they've absorbed envy, pressure, and self-doubt. Others start the day checking emails and tasks, instantly submitting their piece to performance. And still others wake up consumed with yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's fears, never giving space for grace to enter the room. But those who choose to rise and tune their ear to heaven, those who kneel before they stand, receive something different. They don't just start their day, they launch it. They don't walk into it guessing, they walk into it guided. The voice of God is not just comforting, it is commanding. It brings alignment, it brings precision, it brings confidence. It reminds you of your identity before the world has a chance to label you. It reveals purpose before pressure can confuse you. It affirms your worth before comparison can rob you. When you hear God first, your soul finds its anchor. Your decisions gain authority, your presence carries peace. You don't panic through the day, you lead it. God desires to be your first conversation, not your last resort. He's not waiting until you're overwhelmed to speak. He's speaking to prepare you so you don't become overwhelmed. There are decisions you will make today that have generational consequences. There are people you will meet today who are tied to your purpose. There are moments today that are pregnant with destiny. But you will miss them if you let the wrong voice lead you. What you hear first is what you follow longest. So make sure the first voice that fills your ears is not temporary noise but eternal truth. Prayer is not just communication, it is alignment. When you open your mouth to heaven in the morning, you are not just saying words, you are aligning your internal compass with divine direction. You are adjusting your posture. You are recalibrating your spirit. You are dethroning fear and enthroning faith. You are inviting the King of Kings to take His rightful place at the center of your day. When that becomes your habit, your days begin to look different. Miracles don't seem rare, they seem expected. Peace doesn't feel like an escape. It feels like you're normal. Favor doesn't feel like a surprise. It feels like a pattern. And all of this flows from one decision: whose voice will you honor first? God's voice doesn't compete for attention. It waits for invitation. He will not force His way into your morning. He waits to be invited. And when you invite Him in, He doesn't just bring comfort. He brings command. He orders your steps. He strengthens your spirit. He protects your pathway. You can walk into meetings that should intimidate you and speak with authority because you already heard the voice that matters most. You can face situations that should shake you and remain unmoved because you're already rooted in the unshakable. All of it begins with one sacred discipline: letting the voice of God be the first and final authority in your day. Prayer is not a ritual. It is a divine strategy room where heaven and earth connect through your spirit. It is the throne room of the King where you don't enter as a beggar, but as an ambassador. In the natural, people see someone on their knees and assume they are in weakness. But in the kingdom, kneeling is not surrender to defeat, it is surrender to divine direction. Prayer is where power is negotiated, assignments are activated, and orders are issued. It is not simply a religious exercise. It is a governmental meeting between the child of God and the King of Glory. When you truly understand what prayer is, you no longer see it as an obligation. You see it as a necessity. You no longer rush through it as a task. You approach it as the launching pad for everything God wants to do through you. When a kingdom citizen prays, they are stepping into a realm of spiritual intelligence. This is where you receive divine blueprints for earthly execution. You may be facing a business decision, a family crisis, a major opportunity, or a hidden attack. You may not know what to do, but the throne room does. You were never designed to lead your life from your emotions, your logic, or even your past experiences. You were meant to be led by revelation. And revelation is birthed in the place of prayer. In that quiet, consecrated space, God unveils mysteries. He doesn't just comfort you, He counsels you. He doesn't just hear your request, He reveals your role. Prayer is where vision is refined. It's where plans are aligned with heaven's purpose. It's where confusion breaks and clarity floods in. You are not praying to convince God to act. You are aligning yourself to act with Him. You are not begging for scraps. You are accessing blueprints. You are not crying in confusion. You are commanding from revelation. The divine strategy room is not a place of emotional overflow. It's a place of governmental exchange. It is where heaven deposits the next move and instructs your next step. And every major move of God through your life will be preceded by strategic intercession. There are solutions waiting in the strategy room that no meeting, no mentor, and no money can provide. There are connections and open doors that only prayer will reveal. Because prayer is not just spiritual communication, it's kingdom navigation. There are assignments that look too big for you. There are walls that feel too strong. There are systems that seem too complex. And the truth is, they are in the natural. You do not have what it takes. But prayer is where heaven provides what earth lacks. It is in the strategy room that God reminds you are not sent alone. You are not solving it alone. You are not climbing it alone. When you pray, divine resources are released. Wisdom begins to flow. Ideas begin to stir. People begin to show up. Favor begins to locate you. Not because you manipulated a situation, but because you accessed the king's strategy for that situation. You see, too many people pray out of desperation rather than revelation. They approach prayer when everything falls apart instead of as the first part of everything. But true kingdom citizens understand. You pray not because things are wrong. You pray because you refuse to be wrong. You pray to prevent breakdown, not just to survive one. In that sacred space of prayer, the Holy Spirit gives warnings before problems arise. He exposes traps before you step in. He reveals enemies before they strike. That is why prayer is not for emergencies. It is for establishment. It's where God sets things in order long before you ever encounter the battle. There are ideas buried inside you that will never awaken until you step into the divine strategy room. You may think you're running a business, but God sees you as building a solution to a generational problem. You may think you're raising children, but God sees you cultivating reformers and prophets. You may think you're just working a job, but God is positioning you as a voice of influence in hidden corridors of power. You don't discover these truths casually. You discover them in prayer. That's where assignments are confirmed. You may have dreams, but without prayer, they remain dormant. You may have vision, but without prayer, you'll miss the timing and the people assigned to help carry it. Prayer is where divine timing and divine tools collide. It's not enough to have a calling. You need strategy. It's not enough to know what. Heaven must show you how. You need to know when to move, who to connect with, where to step, and when to speak. And none of this comes from human instinct. It comes from divine instruction. When you treat prayer like a meeting with the King of all wisdom, you begin to see how heaven orchestrates every detail of your day. Conversations that seemed random suddenly become intentional. Delays that felt like interruptions reveal themselves as divine protections. Conflicts that shook you become classrooms where the Spirit trains you. In this strategy room, God doesn't just download information. He transforms formation. He doesn't just give you answers. He makes you the answer. You come in thinking you're looking for a solution, and He sends you out as a solution. You come in broken, and He sends you out bold. You come in unsure, and He sends you out unstoppable, because in His presence, fear loses its grip, intimidation loses its authority, confusion loses its voice. And all that remains is the voice of the one who called you. Prayer is not an escape from reality. It is entry into the realm that governs reality. It's not something you do to feel better. It's something you do to be better. It's the spiritual boardroom where God's generals receive fresh commands. It's where the tired find fresh strength. It's where the scattered find supernatural focus. And it's where the overwhelmed exchange their burdens for blueprints. When you step into prayer with understanding, you walk out with divine advantage. If you don't treat prayer as your strategy room, you'll find yourself trying to win battles God never told you to fight, pursuing opportunities He never assigned, or missing divine moments because you weren't tuned to His timing. But when you meet Him early, when you bow your head not in habit, but in hunger, you activate the greatest force in your life, the force of divine strategy. You no longer walk through your day wondering what to do. You step out with confidence, knowing heaven has already spoken and earth must respond. The day doesn't begin with the clock. It begins with communion. Your life was not designed to be ruled by time. It was designed to be ruled by truth. Time is a created tool, not your creator. The alarm clock may tell your body when to move, but only communion with God tells your spirit how to move. You are not governed by minutes and hours. You are governed by revelation and relationship. Until your spirit aligns with heaven's agenda, the day has not truly started. You can shower, dress, and walk out the door, but if you haven't communed with God, you are not yet equipped for what's ahead. Your spirit is still waiting for the alignment that only prayer can provide. This is why you can go through a full day, meet deadlines, answer emails, attend meetings, and still feel disconnected. Because the day did not begin from the right source. When you approach the morning as a sacred meeting with the King, something powerful happens. You are no longer reacting to life. You are commanding it. You're no longer waiting to see what the day brings. You're stepping into the day knowing what heaven has already spoken. Communion is not about religious activity. It's about spiritual alignment. It's the place where you exchange anxiety for assurance, noise for clarity, and routine for revelation. The calendar might say your day starts at 7 a.m., but heaven knows your day starts the moment you kneel, open your heart, and say, "Speak, Lord." That is the true beginning. That is when the atmosphere begins to shift. That is when angels begin to move. That is when favor begins to find you. There is something profound that takes place when you place communion before the clock. You reverse the order of natural life. Instead of being driven by schedules, you're driven by spirit. Instead of being shaped by demands, you're shaped by direction. Instead of being led by deadlines, you're led by divine whispers. It's not about how early you rise. It's about what you do with your first breath. Because the breath you offer to God becomes the wind He uses to carry you through the day. The first thoughts you release into His presence become the blueprint for every step you take. You don't begin with stress, you begin with strategy. You don't begin with fear, you begin with faith. And that shift changes everything. Most people rush into the day, scrambling to catch up with obligations. But kingdom people don't rush, they rise. They don't panic, they posture. They don't begin their day wondering what will happen. They begin it declaring what must happen. Communion allows you to access the divine control room before the traffic of life begins. In that place, you are reminded that you are not a slave to circumstance. You are a son or daughter under covenant. The pressure of the day may be real, but in communion, God reminds you of who you are and who He is. He reveals what is important and what is merely urgent. He separates the eternal from the temporary. He infuses your soul with an awareness of His presence that walks with you into every room you enter. Prayer doesn't just prepare you for the day, it programs the day to favor you. The moment you align with God in communion, heaven begins to rearrange circumstances to fit divine intention. Meetings shift. Conversations are guided. Delays become divine detours. Sudden doors open where there were once walls. Unexpected resources show up. Things fall into place. Not because of coincidence, but because of communion. Your day becomes synchronized with heaven's rhythm. Favor isn't a random blessing. It becomes the natural result of beginning your day in the presence of the One who holds all things together. You were not created to walk blindly into your day, hoping things work out. You were designed to receive heavenly codes in the morning that unlock earthly doors in the afternoon. That's what communion does. It provides heaven's download for your earthly assignment. It is where your inner world is ordered, so your outer world can align. You receive peace that surpasses understanding. You receive insight that surpasses training. You receive authority that surpasses position. And you walk into the world not simply as a participant, but as an agent of purpose. Many people check the time before they check their spirit. They respond to a schedule before they respond to the Spirit. But when communion becomes your beginning, time becomes your servant, not your master. You begin to notice that you get more done with less stress. You move through your day with grace instead of grind. You carry presence instead of pressure. The supernatural becomes natural because your point of origin was not the alarm, it was the altar. And from the altar flows anointing. From communion flows command. So don't just wake up, rise up. Don't just glance at the clock. Gaze into the presence. Don't just get dressed for the world, get clothed in the Spirit. Let communion mark your beginning. Let His voice tune your heart. Let His agenda frame your day. Because the day doesn't truly begin when the clock strikes a number. It begins when your soul strikes a chord with heaven. And once that connection is made, everything that follows will carry the weight, the wisdom, and the wonder of that divine beginning. Unprayed mornings birth unprotected movements. There is a realm that cannot be seen with the natural eye, and every single day you wake up, you're stepping into that realm whether you're prepared or not. There are assignments set against your peace, traps laid for your purpose, and distractions crafted to waste your time and drain your spirit. And when you walk into the day without prayer, you walk uncovered. You walk into spiritual warfare wearing natural armor. You engage with unseen forces using seen logic. You face demonic strategies with human energy, and that is not enough. You may have plans, but without prayer, those plans lack protection. You may have good intentions, but without intercession, those intentions become vulnerable. Because what you did not pray about, you cannot properly guard. The enemy is subtle. He does not always come with loud threats or visible danger. Sometimes he comes in the form of minor interruptions that derail divine appointments, a wrong conversation, an emotional outburst, a delayed decision, a toxic thought pattern. These don't feel demonic, but they are assignments designed to knock you off course without you even noticing. And when you don't bathe your morning in prayer, you have no discernment to detect them. What looks like coincidence could be a trap. What feels like comfort could be a spiritual sedative. What sounds like urgency could be the enemy's voice cloaked in business. Morning prayer is not about asking for a good day. It's about enforcing heaven's agenda and disarming the enemy's schemes before they activate. When you pray in the morning, you authorize heaven's army to go before you. Angels are dispatched to walk into rooms before you get there. Favor is commanded to precede your footsteps. The Spirit begins to whisper instructions throughout your day. You're no longer reacting to what happens. You're responding from a place of victory that was already secured before the sun rose. The reason many believers face unnecessary confusion, tension, or fatigue is not because they lack faith, but because they lacked early preparation. Unprayed mornings create spiritual blind spots. You move through your schedule exposed, vulnerable to the small foxes that spoil the vine. But when you pray, even the smallest detail becomes subject to divine alignment. You must understand, every moment you spend in morning prayer is an investment in divine insurance. You are setting boundaries in the Spirit. You are authorizing divine interruption where needed and divine protection where required. That meeting you prayed over, God will shift it. That client you surrendered to Him, He'll expose their real intention. That decision you committed to Him, He'll bring peace or resistance. Because when you invite God in before you begin, He walks into every space before you arrive. But when you don't, you're essentially telling heaven, I've got this. And you never truly have it without Him. Prayer in the morning surrounds your mind with clarity. It places a guard over your emotions. It brings your flesh into submission. It places divine authority on your lips and awareness in your spirit. You don't just walk, you walk watched over. You don't just decide, you decide with divine discernment. You don't just speak, you speak with heaven's breath. Your responses become slower, wiser, and more purposeful. You sense things others miss. You see beyond the surface. You recognize the spirit behind the words. You pause when something feels off, even if everything looks fine, because you are no longer navigating the day by sight. You are guided by the Spirit. Too many people live reactive lives because they pray late instead of early. They wait until the battle is raging to put on armor. But morning prayer is not a response to war. It is preparation for it. It's where you decide what kind of day will be formed around you. It's where you set the tone and spiritual climate. It's where you declare, no weapon formed against me will prosper, before the weapon ever tries to form. When you leave your home without prayer, it's like leaving your front door open in the middle of the night and hoping nothing enters. But when you pray, you slam the door shut and station angels on your porch. It is not paranoia, it is preparation. You are not fearing the enemy, you are frustrating him. Because every time he plans something in darkness, your early prayer exposes it in the light. He schemes and God dismantles. He whispers lies and you hear truth. He sends distractions and you remain focused. He plots accidents and they are rerouted by divine detours. Not because of luck, but because of prayer. Morning prayer is the alarm system of the Spirit. It sounds before the break-in. It warns before the crash. It shields before the wound. You don't have to wait to be under attack to pray. You pray so the attack never reaches its full intent. Your calling is too valuable, your time too limited, and your impact too vital to be left unguarded. There are things God wants to do through you today that require spiritual sharpness, emotional stability, and divine timing, and all of that is forged in morning communion. That is where your weapons are sharpened. That is where your courage is restored. That is where your ears are trained. That is where your heart is purified. You cannot afford to walk out without it, because the moment your feet touch the floor, the realm of the unseen begins to move, and you must move in step with the Spirit, not behind Him. So don't let a busy morning steal your protection. Don't let the demands of life rob you of the very thing that secures your life. Don't wait until midday to consult heaven. Speak early. Align early. Declare early. Because when you pray in the morning, you are not just preparing for a good day. You are sealing your path in divine covering, anchoring your purpose in heaven's agenda, and declaring to all of hell, I am not walking alone. What you don't command will control you. Every single morning you stand at a gate. Either you take dominion over the day, or the day will take dominion over you. There is no neutral ground in the Spirit. Passivity is not peace, it is surrender. And the one who refuses to command their day through prayer has already agreed to be ruled by the voices, circumstances, and atmospheres that await. The world is not waiting to be kind to you. It is waiting to see what authority you walk in. And if you rise without speaking, without legislating, without decreeing, then every pressure, every emotion, every demonic strategy will treat you as a servant, not as a son or daughter walking in kingdom dominion. Prayer is not a passive ritual. It is legislative power. You are not just having a devotional moment, you are holding court. You are not whispering wishful thoughts, you are issuing divine decrees. You are not hoping the day works out, you are commanding it to align with heaven's order. Every time you speak in alignment with God's word in prayer, you are writing the spiritual laws that govern your atmosphere. You are shaping how your day will respond to you. You are not waiting for favor to find you. You are summoning it to surround you. You are not hoping to be protected. You are dispatching angels to guard your path. You are not waiting for clarity. You are commanding confusion to break and divine light to shine. Most people are reactive in their mornings because they've never been taught that prayer is governmental. But heaven understands it. Hell understands it. Creation understands it. The only ones often unaware are the believers who've been trained to beg rather than rule. But you were not saved to survive. You were positioned to govern. You are an authorized voice in the earth, and every single day the atmosphere awaits your instruction. What you bind will be bound. What you loose will be loosed. But if you say nothing, you authorize anything. Silence is not safety. Silence is surrender. And far too many days are lost to chaos simply because the believer remained silent when they were supposed to legislate. When you wake up and pray, you are not speaking to impress heaven. You are speaking to enforce heaven. You are not trying to get God to agree with you. You are agreeing with Him and letting every other system know what the agenda is. You declare peace over your home, and anxiety must retreat. You command focus over your mind, and distractions lose their grip. You speak divine connections into your path, and the right people begin to appear. You cancel every premature death, every car accident, every delay, every sabotage, every unnecessary argument before they even try to manifest. You walk through your home, your workplace, your vehicle, your meetings, your family schedule, and you stamp it with kingdom alignment. This is not arrogance, it is authority. You were not designed to live as a spiritual wanderer. You were born to speak order into chaos, to bring divine clarity to natural confusion, to lift your voice and create with your words what God already spoke in His word. When you understand this, you begin to see prayer as the boardroom of heaven. It is not emotional release. It is policy making. It is not wishful thinking. It is divine execution. And everything in your life will begin to shift when you speak from that place. The ground starts responding to your voice because it recognizes your alignment. The weather of your life begins to change, not because the circumstances immediately shift, but because the commander has arrived and the atmosphere knows it. Without prayer, you walk into days that already have voices assigned to dominate you. Voices of discouragement, voices of anxiety, voices of temptation, voices of distraction, voices of limitation. If you do not speak, those voices will. And whichever voice speaks the loudest early will often lead the longest throughout the day. But prayer makes your voice the loudest. It makes God's truth the first sound your spirit hears. And it makes every demonic frequency bow in silence. Because where authority is declared, confusion is denied access. Prayer is not about informing God of your needs. It is about invoking God's rule over your reality. You are calling heaven's will into the earth. You are assigning resources. You are shifting outcomes. You are canceling cycles. You are commanding alignment. You are reversing patterns. You are making war in peace. You are not praying for victory. You are praying from it. And that position changes everything. When you pray from a commanding place, even your body begins to respond. Your posture changes. Your confidence rises. Your decisions become sharper. Your time becomes more purposeful. Your relationships become more discerning. And the things that used to control you, fear, impulse, distraction, fatigue, lose their grip because the commander has spoken, and everything under your jurisdiction must now come into order. This is why morning prayer is not optional for a believer who wants to live on purpose. Without it, you're stepping into the battlefield without your weapons. You may have potential, but without authority, you will be manipulated. You may have gifting, but without command, it will be misused. You may have energy, but without direction, it will be wasted. So every morning before your feet touch the ground, let your spirit rise with command. Speak life. Speak order. Speak protection. Speak clarity. Speak favor. Speak breakthrough. Don't ask the day to be kind to you. Tell the day what it must become. And watch heaven honor your words, because your words are born from divine alignment. You are not a victim of time or circumstance. You are an agent of authority. And when you choose to command your day through prayer, you no longer live at the mercy of the clock, the culture, or the chaos. You live at the command of heaven. Heaven is open in the morning. Don't miss your appointment. The early hours are not just the start of a natural day. They are the divine window through which heaven releases strategies, instructions, and interventions for what lies ahead. There is a sacred rhythm to morning that can't be duplicated later in the day. It's not just about timing, it's about access. Heaven schedules certain appointments with those who are awake, attentive, and aligned when the earth is still quiet. In the silence of morning, when distractions are minimal and noise hasn't yet taken the throne, the king waits to release secrets to those who show up. He waits to deposit clarity into minds that haven't yet been clouded by conversation, media, or pressure. He waits to align hearts before they are pulled in different directions. When you ignore the morning, you don't just skip prayer. You miss a divine briefing. You forfeit the heavenly downloads that were assigned for your next decision, your next conversation, your next move. You miss the still, small voice that wanted to whisper instruction before the noise began. You miss the gentle correction, the holy caution, the prophetic insight that could have spared you from wasting energy, time, or opportunity. What you don't receive in the morning often shows up later as confusion or missed moments, because the Spirit was speaking, but you weren't in your seat. There is a reason Scripture often records that prophets, kings, and Jesus himself rose early to pray. It wasn't because they were trying to impress God with discipline. It was because they understood heaven's timing. They knew that the first offering of time holds the greatest weight. The early altar carries authority. What you present to God first becomes the pattern that governs everything else. If you give him silence, disorder may fill the space. If you give him worship, clarity will meet you. If you give him your mind, peace will crown it. If you give him your will, power will uphold it. The morning is not just about personal devotion. It's about heavenly transaction. It's where vision is made clear. It's where warnings are released. It's where assignments are clarified and burdens are lifted. It's where God doesn't just tell you what to do. He shows you how to move. When you enter that space, you're not just praying. You're entering a briefing room where heaven shares intelligence from the unseen. You're not begging for blessings. You're receiving instructions to walk in dominion. You're not hoping for help. You're hearing. This is the way. Walk in it. But if you sleep through your appointment, you're forced to navigate the day with yesterday's insight. You walk into conversations with old discernment. You enter meetings unaware of what's really at stake. You face challenges without fresh grace. You are present in the world but absent from the throne. And that absence carries a cost. It may not show up immediately, but by noon you feel the tension. The pace is off. The decisions are unclear. The emotions are stirred. The words you speak feel empty. The weight of the day sits heavier than it should. And all of it traces back to a missed moment at the beginning. Heaven doesn't shout in the chaos. It speaks in the stillness. And morning offers stillness like no other time. Before your phone lights up, before people ask for your time, before your soul becomes cluttered, That is the hour when God waits. That is the space where portals are open and revelation flows freely. That is where your heart can be fully present before being pulled in every direction. But that kind of clarity is only given to those who rise, those who honor the appointment, those who understand that every morning is not just a gift, it is a gate. Some doors will not open later in the day simply because they were assigned to morning obedience. Some provision will not appear in the afternoon because it was scheduled for early intercession. Some favor will not be activated at night because it was tied to a morning word. There are keys that only appear when you meet God in the sacred quiet before the world begins to speak. When you enter that space, heaven doesn't just listen. It responds. God honors those who honor his voice first. He gives more to those who seek him early, not because they earn it, but because they're ready to carry it. If you wait until the pressure of the day forces you to pray, you've already traded divine strategy for survival mode. But when you enter the morning appointment with intentionality, you shift from survival to stewardship. You don't panic when trouble appears. You walk in the awareness that you were briefed for it. You don't hesitate when decisions arise. You recall the word given in silence. You don't carry burdens aimlessly. You remember the peace that met you at the altar. Morning becomes your place of power. It becomes the high place from which you descend into the day with confidence, clarity, and conviction. So don't let sleep steal your access. Don't let urgency replace intimacy. Don't let distraction rob you of divine instruction. Heaven is open in the morning. The Spirit is speaking. The King is waiting. Take your seat. Show up. Tune your ear. Receive what has been set aside for you, because what you gain in that sacred hour will shape everything that follows. What you carry from that throne room will carry you through every task, and what you command in his presence will govern what tries to command you in the world. My friend, hear me carefully. Your life will never rise above your discipline to meet with God before the world meets with you. The power to rule your day is not in your schedule, your strategy, or your stamina. It is in your submission to the throne before the day begins. You were not created to wake up into confusion, respond to crisis, or stumble through chaos. You were created to command, to legislate, and to dominate from the place of divine communion. Every morning heaven calls your name, not to entertain you, but to entrust you. Entrust you with clarity, entrust you with wisdom. Entrust you with instructions that can shift your entire environment. That's not religion. That's kingdom order. That's not routine. That's rulership, because prayer is not just a moment, it's your mandate. It's not just communication, it's legislation. And if you neglect that seat of authority in the morning, you surrender the power to set the course of your day. Let me say it plainly, kings don't wake up and wait. They wake up and decree. You are a child of the King, and your voice carries weight in the Spirit. But that voice must be trained in the secret place. That power must be refined in God's presence. So before you scroll, before you check, before you speak, seek. Meet with the King before you meet the crowd. Align with heaven before you answer to earth. Because the one who governs the morning will govern the momentum of the day. Wake up with intention. Speak with authority. Pray with clarity. And walk with dominion. Your day is waiting. But so is your appointment in the throne room. Don't be late. The future is shaped before the sun rises. Heaven is open. Take your seat.